GearNetwork.com.
The following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
From the Gear Network studios in Rochester, New York, this is the Listen In Podcast with your hosts, John Cimino and Brennan Durrell. And now, here's John.
One of these days I'll get this soundboard right here, but and it was just popping in my ear here. But welcome everybody to the Listen In Podcast. I am John Cimino at I am JC Money, wherever the freak social media you find me. Joined over there, if you're watching on Patreon, Mr. Brennan Durrell. Brennan, say hello.
What's up?
All right. Sounded very, very clear. Do I sound okay right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not like last week.
Okay, good, because that really
I was like
pissed
turning
me
my
off.
headphones up. I'm like,
that really pissed me off. That whole.
I was like,
I think
I'm at max.
I think the setting. Well, because when I was doing post edit and I fucking I'm listening to this and I'm like, immediately as soon as it happened, I was like, that's what he meant when he was like, whoa, you just kind of came right back and now you sound normal. So it was like the first 10 minutes of that podcast, I had to like line by line, detail by detail, manually kind of adjust.
That sounds fun.
And it was not fun. So I had to manually balance the levels, and it's still the first 10 minutes of last week sounded like shit. So I was just like,
it is what it is.
But anyways, thanks everybody that's listening. If I sound tired, it's because I fucking am. All right. And that's you're getting the raw.
You hear that sound? It's a fucking tuba.
It's a fucking tuba. Yeah, but we're going HBO pretty much right away. But on today's show, we're just going to recap kind of a couple of, what's left in football. But I think we'll start there with what I deem as the surprise really of the playoffs so far. And that is your Green Bay Packers, whom, for lack of better terminology, just
shit stomped.
Yeah, shit stomped the Dallas Cowboys. Now I know
They're
the score
undefeated at home.
The score at the end of the game was 48-32, but trust me, this game was not nearly as
it
close.
It was 48-16 when we took our starters out of the game.
Right. And
on both sides of the ball.
Not nearly as close as the score would indicate.
Dude, imagine being a favorite and like people were talking like Dallas is going to get that rematch with the 49ers, like, and this is going to be different. And like this team could go to a Super Bowl. And then like to imagine you having like the team you're playing against is taking their starters out so they don't get injured for their game next week.
Right.
Because you're already done.
No kidding. No kidding. So let's go.
I mean, they shouldn't even have got that touchdown before the half because they false started on that last play, and that should have been the end of the half.
Absolutely.
Like he would have been going from the 7-yard line instead of the 2. And it could have been a lot worse for
Absolutely.
Dallas.
Taking a look at the stats here. Jordan Love, 16 of 21, 272 yards, 3 touchdowns. Aaron Jones, 21 carries, 118 yards, 3 touchdowns. And help me out with the wide
Romeo
receiver.
Doubs.
Romeo Doubs, that's it. I wanted to say Doobs, but
so a lot of people say Dubs.
Dubs. Romeo Doubs, 6 receptions, 151 yards, 1 touchdown. Brandon, the team stats here, they had 415 yards, but 0 turnovers. That's the big key there to Dallas's 2. Dallas had more yards. They also had more turnovers, more first downs, and Dallas also controlled the possession, managing the 31 minutes and 5 seconds of offensive football.
Yeah, and most of it was in catch-up mode because Green Bay in the first half, like their first couple scoring drives took a lot of time off the clock, and it was by design. LaFleur wanted the coin toss, wanted the ball, wanted to go down and score right away, and then put them back on their heels because teams are different when they have to come from behind, even if it's one score. But like in this case, where they came out, got the touchdown on a 12-play drive right down the field on them, scored with an Aaron Jones touchdown. Dak and the Cowboys got the ball. They got a first down, started to move, and then he threw one a little wide of CeeDee Lamb. and, had to punt. And then, here comes Green Bay starting the second quarter and they score again.
Sure.
Now you're down 2 touchdowns already. And now you're like, oh shit. Because the pressure's on now. You're like, you're a favorite. And you're like, what are these guys doing in my building? They just went against our, 5th rated defense in the NFL down the field with pretty much ease in 2 straight drives. Like, you start to creep that into your head and you start to worry. And then you start to kind of like, you make throws you normally wouldn't. And, that's kind of what happened with Dallas. Like, Green Bay came out and kind of hit him with a right cross right out of the gate. And they were kind of like, what is this? Like, why is this happening? That pass that he made to Wicks for the 3rd touchdown was insane. Where he checked at the line, he saw who was coming, adjusted the protection, moved his receiver so that he would, put him in motion, which would draw away one guy. And then Wicks ran an unbelievable route, just put Gilmore in like on roller skates, and then went right by him. And then, Jordan Love off his back foot throws it. It was 20-0 after that. And then there is even more tightness, and there's a pick 6 that Dak throws. And it was pretty much curtains from there. 27-0. I remember Pat Mahomes and, the Chiefs came back on the Texans after that big first half they were losing. But,
this didn't have the vibe of that. This to me had the vibe, and I didn't watch the game in full. I did record it, and I do plan on watching it just because I relish.
Probably on NFL Network this week.
Oh, of course, if it hasn't been already 6 times. But like, I relish in the fact that the Dallas Cowboys once again let everybody down, their entire fan base down. So I relish in that, as well as the Miami Dolphins. If you listen to the Trust the Podcast this week, that are listening, I went on a massive rant about the Miami Dolphins, particularly how their fans reacted to the Buffalo Bills and them having the game moved due to a damn freaking winter, like, natural disaster.
Yeah, it's what I mean? Funny, like, how people don't understand Buffalo to that point, because Steelers fans were complaining about it. They're like, oh, I'm here in this place of Buffalo, and look, there's just flurries. Yeah, that's because it doesn't snow all directly in like the same parts of Buffalo.
Right.
Like, there are parts that are closer to the lake that get in that stream, which the Bills were.
Right. Orchard Stadium, Park was right in that red stream that
it was recorded with this, this clown that was there, like, walking around in his Steelers gear. And it was like, if you would have went 1.5 miles up the road, you would have had a foot of snow.
Oh, like, for sure.
These guys were walking into their seats. Like,
I think what gets me
plowing.
I think what gets me about those folks is, and I was going to kind of save it for when we talk about the Bills a little bit later on, because there's still more about the Packers I want to talk about. But I think what people, because I see all the and there's no dome. Why? Well, it doesn't matter if there was a dome in Buffalo or not. Like,
you couldn't drive.
It
wasn't about the weather for the players.
It was right. It wasn't about the weather, and it wasn't even so much about the fans in the stadium as much as like first responders can't even like if there's a fire or something.
Well, somebody said it the other day. It was like, of all teams to not like, worry about to worry about things like that, it's the Buffalo Bills as emergency responders. What if there's an emergency like Damar Hamlin had?
Right. Exactly.
You can't get through.
Exactly.
You can't go anywhere. So that's why they had that shutdown. That's why they have, the travel ban. Like, that's the purpose. It's not because people are pussies. Like,
right. And I think that's kind of what comes with, success in teams. Because I remember
they would have lost Sunday and they would have lost on Monday. Like,
right. The Steelers had no business. Let's just make this very clear. The Steelers had absolutely no business being in that game and had no business being in the playoffs. They did not. I love Coach Tomlin. I love the fact that he had another winning season.
That roster's,
the fact that he continuously coaches up lesser rosters, makes him
maximizing talent.
Yeah, makes him a Coach of the Year candidate every year.
It's also like his biggest hindrance too, is because if you don't draft well in those later rounds, this is what you're going to get is continued mediocrity.
Exactly.
It's like you're going to be like 9-8. You're going to be 10-7. Because you're not maximizing those picks. Like Green Bay, for their credit, going back to them, like those guys drafted well, and they have drafted into that, that core of like where they're at. These receivers that they have, they're all first and second year, and a lot of them were drafted second, third, fourth round in some cases with, some of these guys, and they're all playing it well. Like nobody had on their draft board Jaden Reed or Dontavian Wicks. Like these weren't in even the top 10 wide receivers in, these draft boards that come out pre-draft. And yet these guys are balling out like they're, like Wicks is getting a lot of comparison to Devontae Adams because of his footwork. He's so strong with his footwork. And that was one of Adams's biggest weapons, was his footwork allowed him to get so much separation. And he was so quick off the jump that, it was just like, how is this guy wide open every time? And this is why, because these guys, they work on it. They had I don't know if you saw it. I think I sent it to you, but you were probably like bombed out of your head at that time anyways. Dan Orlowski's breakdown of like that game with the routes that were being run by those receivers. He's like, they're not just athletic. They're smart.
Yeah,
they're very smart.
I did see that, and it's funny you mentioned Dan Orlovsky. Orlovsky, if I can freaking talk here, because I do have some audio here I wanted to play for you. It was off of the Pat McAfee show that Orlovsky was interviewed today, and said, is his piece of advice that he has for one Jordan Love. And we'll go ahead and click the play in the audio, and then we could talk about that. Take a listen. This is from the Pat McAfee show. Dan Orlovsky, ESPN analyst.
Do I think they can go there and win? I do. I think that Matt LaFleur has done such a great job, and that's really the change since, I don't know, week 9 or week 10, Ty, is they sat there and said, hey, he's talented. We have to protect him. So every play, LaFleur starts with, how do we protect him? Sometimes it's extra tight end. Sometimes it's, they did a great job this week. Aaron Jones was always the person that they play faked at Micah Parsons with, so then he could ship Micah Parsons. So I think that helps going against the San Francisco defense. Jordan's been great versus zone defense here recently. San Francisco runs a ton of zone. The little hesitation I have in this game directly with Jordan versus that defense is everybody has fallen in love with like the sloppy mechanics throw, fade away, off my back foot throw. And it's awesome. And he's one of those rare guys that can do it. And it's great. But when you play against a team that San Francisco is, from their defensive line rush perspective, more fundamental and disciplined than Dallas. Dallas wants to just create chaos when they rush you. That's all they want. They want to create chaos. But when you create chaos, you can create some seams. This throw to Wicks is sick. It's absolutely sick. Too.
Great play as well.
But when you so you can move a little bit. You saw him move a little bit. San Francisco doesn't do that. San Francisco wants the walls to cave in on you with your rush. So mechanically, you're going to have to be a little bit more on top of it and a little bit more in rhythm and in time, because they will play that zone defense and not man defense. So you're not going to have, Dobbs running one way and then completely on the other way and losing defenders. So there's going to be moments where you sit there and go, again, some of those awesome athletic throws, they're great, but you can get burned with them as well. And that's my only hesitation playing against a great zone defense.
Thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, he does make a good point, but the thing of it is that Green Bay has their offensive line is a big reason why the second half turnaround has happened. They have gotten better about blocking. They have gotten better with their protections. Jordan has gotten better with directing his protection. He'll go out with a hard count and he'll see, who's coming, who's moving. And then he'll see it and then he'll say, hey, 57's coming, whoever, that slides the protection. You've got two guys on that line, Zach Tom, who was a draft pick last year. Mm-hmm. And then you've got Elton Jenkins. Elton Jenkins took I think some 900 snaps this season. 0 sacks allowed.
So as you're talking here, I'm sorry. The video was still playing in the background because the next video that came up, and I just happened to take a glance at it, and it looks like Adam Schefter reported former Cardinals head coach Cliff Kingsbury, who is currently a senior offensive analyst and quarterbacks coach at USC, is expected to interview for the Chicago Bears offensive coordinator job. Kingsbury's USC quarterback Caleb Williams is expected to receive strong consideration to be the number 1 overall pick, which is what the Bears have. So.
He should. There is a lot of noise on Twitter. There is a large contingency of Bears fans who are just, for some reason or another, just in love with Justin Fields.
Well, they've been conditioned the last few years from ESPN, believe it or not, to love Justin Fields.
I don't know if they've been conditioned to love him. There's nothing in his stats or anything that he does that is exciting, that you can look at and go, well, if he got a number 1 receiver this year. Some teams don't have a number 1 receiver. Green Bay doesn't have a number 1 receiver. They don't have a bona fide number 1 receiver. This guy had a go-to number 1 receiver and still could not manage, getting 3,000 yards passing. And the bulk of his yards came from passing to that dude. Yeah. You watch a lot of the film with Justin Fields, and the biggest problem is that he does not read defenses well or fast enough.
Sure.
And he starts to panic in the pocket, and that's when he gets the happy feet, and he either takes off or he takes a sack. There's some really bad film against Tampa where they were getting down to the point where they could have had a game-winning drive, and Fields, gets in the pocket, has time, starts to survey the field, realizes that more is, doubled, and then starts to look around the field. And as he's looking through his progression, he passes up 2 wide open guys in the middle of the field. And then just taking a sack. Those are the kind of things that he has struggled with since he's gotten to the NFL. And you can't really say oh, well, it's coordinator. It's just, he's going to be on his 3rd offensive coordinator. If they decide to keep him, he will be coming up in his 4th year in the NFL, which means the rookie contract's going to be up, and you have to decide, am I going to pay this guy? Based on what I can't imagine that 3 years, I don't see how they're going to do it. Sure. The biggest rumor that seems to be floating around, and the one that has the most smoke right now, is that Atlanta is looking to possibly trade the 8th pick to the Bears for Justin Fields.
That might be a better change of scenery for him.
It'd be a good change of scenery, especially given who is interviewed for had a second interview today. There was Mr. Belichick.
Yeah. Well, with McCarthy staying in Dallas, I feel
Atlanta has good personnel. Sure, they have playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. So if you throw in a quarterback like Fields that could benefit from a fresh start, and get a stable coaching, because Belichick's not going to be 1 year and then he's out. He's going to be there for a bit. He's going to put a stable team in place, to do that. And maybe he turns it around, maybe he doesn't. But if you're the Chicago Bears, who chose Mitch Trubisky, traded up to get Trubisky over Pat Mahomes, and you see what Pat Mahomes is doing, and now you're getting Caleb Williams, who's getting insane amount of comparisons and accolades from NFL scouts, NFL analysts. They all say the same thing. This guy has it. And you can say, oh, well, he was crying at USC.
Yeah, I dismiss all nonsense. I'll tell you this right now. I dismiss
it's all noise.
I dismiss it's all noise. Every single bit of that, because usually the folks that end up saying that or make a big deal about it are the folks of the teams that those people beat.
Oh, what about the Notre Dame game? Yeah, guys have bad games. That does happen.
So, here's the thing.
Peyton Manning came out the gate and just chucked the ball over the yard and got picked off a bunch of times. They were 1-15.
Right.
Like,
so with Caleb Williams, I don't, because another side of that Caleb Williams argument here, and then we'll have to hit a commercial break pretty soon. The other side of the Caleb Williams argument is, the stigma on USC quarterbacks, right? USC quarterbacks almost always never pan out.
Right.
That said,
same with the Ohio State quarterbacks too, but CJ Stroud did.
Yeah. That said, I don't know that I subscribe to that with Caleb Williams. I don't know that I think he's the second coming of like a Peyton Manning or a Tom Brady, but in the same, I don't think he's like a Sam Darnold or a Mark Sanchez.
I think he's in the mold of the guys that are making plays right now.
Right.
He's in the mold of the Mahomes, the mold of CJ Stroud, Jordan Love, like the guys that are athletic, throw the ball a little funky, make the off schedule plays, like they keep plays alive, but keep their eyes downfield. That's what they thought they had in Justin Fields, but they have not seen that. And that's the thing. Like, you're going to say, okay, well, he's a USC quarterback. Well, Ohio State has zero track record until this year.
Ohio State sucks.
Quarterbacks.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah. Lendell White.
Never get old.
Never gets old. Quotes.
Never gets
old. But CJ Stroud is, he was drafted number 2 overall.
All right.
And, look what he's doing.
Yeah, absolutely. You can look you can look no further than that right there as a prime example, given how
and then everyone's going to say, well, that's one guy. And it's like, it is.
Yeah, but it's a vibe.
The tools and tangibles that he has, that's what you see in Williams. That's why he should be the number 1
That's
pick.
what
and if the Bears don't pick him, good for me.
Oh, if the Bears don't pick him, good for you. I would not cry any tears. Except maybe tears of joy if the Jets found their way up there to draft him and sit behind Rodgers. What do they got to trade?
They don't have anything.
They could try. I don't know. I don't know.
Zach Wilson
and a hando. I don't know. We'll leave it there. But on the other side of this break here, we are going to talk a little bit about the Bills and then kind of go into the I almost said wild card weekend, divisional round weekend, Saturday, Sunday slate of games. Brandon and I will bring back who you got, and we'll see if our pick'ems next week, if our picks this week are good next week. Anywho, listen in the podcast. Stick around. We'll be right back after this. All right, and we're back. John Cimino here. Brandon Gorell over there. All right, my friend. Let's talk about the Buffalo Bills real quick. Improbable run, 6-0 since Allah Akbar McDermott was born, right? But still, they're playing some ball. They're doing the thing. They're winning, and the Miami Dolphins are not moving forward at all, which is always welcome in this household here. The Buffalo Bills, my friend, they ended up beating the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Shock of the year,
of course.
Who would have thought they would have toppled Mason Rudolph?
Exactly. They defeated the Pittsburgh Steelers 31-17. Buffalo, these are stats per Trust the Podcast's Ryan Wolf here. I'm going to read those off to this audience here, though. Buffalo moves to 12-6 on the season and extends their winning streak to 6 games, both stats including the playoffs. Buffalo also moves to 15-4 all-time in home playoff games. It is the second time in franchise history that Buffalo has won a playoff game in 4 consecutive seasons, and the only other time was 1990 to 1993. Very good years. I know you remember that very well, Brandon. Sean McDermott joins Marv Levy, with whom has 11, as the only Buffalo head coaches with 5+ playoff wins. And of course, the mega snowstorm pushed Sunday's game to Monday afternoon because of the inability to safely get people to the stadium, first responders, and all of that. And of course, remembering last year's big storm in Buffalo, that almost killing, or not almost, that in fact killing 50+ people. or almost killed 50 people, I should say. But the number was there. There was deaths, people freezing in the car and all that stuff. So again, going back to the soapbox I had on Trust the Podcast this past week, but also kind of alluded to a little earlier on with some of these Dolphins fans, even, and I didn't even realize the Steelers fans got in on that too. I know Dolphins fans were pitching a freaking conniption about it.
It was chilly. So chilly. Boo. Yeah, and Pat Mahomes had to play in it too. He just is fine.
Boo.
Not like he's superhuman or anything. Like, I was born and raised by wolves and the Alaskans. Like, these guys had to play on the same field with the same temperature. It wasn't like they got to come out on the field and be like, oh, well, you know what? It's 80 degrees and sunny when we're playing, but you are playing in the freezing cold. Like,
absolutely.
I think it's suck it, because for how long have they been cooking everybody on their sidelines down in Miami? Given the visiting sideline,
exactly,
that fucking
exactly.
sauna that they play
it's
in.
very rich for that that team, that fan base,
Dumpster.
To whatever. But anyways, let's go through the stats a little bit. Josh Allen, 21 of 30, 203 yards, 3 touchdowns. He also added some yardage on the ground there. 74 yards and 1 touchdowns. And Brandon, this was actually
yarder.
Yeah, this was actually provided to us from Trust the Podcast intern Chris Downey. Josh Allen is the first player in NFL history. Let me bring that back. First player in NFL history to throw 3+ passing touchdowns while also rushing for 70+ yards and a touchdown in a postseason game.
They got a stat for everything.
They do have a stat for everything.
70 yards, like so specific.
But
there was guys that rushed for 68 and did that, but this is the first one to do 70.
Indeed. Josh Allen reached his fastest speed as a ball carrier of the season, gained most RYOE. I don't know exactly.
Was that on his fake slide?
That was on the fake slide.
Stupid.
52-yard his 52-yard touchdown run was the longest in Buffalo postseason history and second longest by a quarterback in the Super Bowl era. Some of you may remember the 2012 divisional round matchup where Colin Kaepernick of the San Francisco 49ers ran for 56 yards. The run is also the longest of Josh Allen's career, regular and postseason combined. My man, he was doing the thing. The Bills are now, according to @Sean PBB on the X Twitter. The Bills are now 32-6 when Josh Allen has touchdowns from both the ground and the air. This is including regular season and the playoffs. Moving on more here. This dude, Ryan, he's the best in the business with gathering all these stats here. Josh Allen became the 4th quarterback in NFL history with 20+ passing touchdowns in the first 9 career playoff games, joining Dan Marino at 21, Pat Mahomes at 22, as well as Drew Brees at 22. He's doing the thing, and in large part, not that he absolutely needs to be the reason for their winning, because, obviously the switch from Ken Dorsey to Joe Brady has opened up the offense, particularly the dual tight end as well as the running back, incorporating those a little bit more, where they were not really staples in the Dorsey offense. It was more kind of around Josh Allen. But I think as part of this 6-game win streak, that shift and incorporating Dalton Kincaid as well as Dawson Knox and then James Cook out of the backfield as well, that's really kind of not only opened up the Buffalo Bills from a performance standpoint, but it's also allowed Josh Allen really to kind of rest a little bit and not really rely so much on him being Superman in at least 3 of these 6 games, which I think has led to kind of where we are now, which is now a home game for the Buffalo Bills against the Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, now this is his first road playoff game. Bills fans are making a very, very big deal about that, but I will remind you all, Patrick Mahomes has not. This may be his first road playoff game, but this is not his first road game. So, You know what I mean? Like, get that out of your head. kind of focus on, just being there now for your team. But I turn to you, Brandon, as now we stare arguably one of the, if not the biggest game of the weekend here. We were talking about it off air, it being a kind of a staple game. So tell the listening audience kind of what you told me, why you feel this game is a staple game, particularly for Josh Allen.
Because it kind of could be a legacy game. If Pat Mahomes wins again, and moves on to another AFC Championship game, and possibly a Super Bowl, depending on, who they're facing next. And Josh Allen and the Bills got what they wanted. This is what I've been hearing from Bills fans for, the last few years, is that, every time we have to play Mahomes and the Chiefs in the playoffs, it's always in Kansas City. Well, this time you've got it in Buffalo.
Yep.
You guys are the 2 seed. He's playing his first road playoff game, which is an insane stat. The fact that they've had that much success and never had to play a road playoff game.
That's actually quite admirable.
They're neutral field, in the Super Bowl, but as far as going on and playing a true road game, they have not played one in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
If you have all of those factors and you do not win, it is going to creep into the heads of those guys, especially the quarterback, because I have seen it happen in my own franchise, which I am a shareholder, so I can say that. The grip that is going to go on, where you're going to think, what do I have to do to get to the next level? And why do I keep, failing against the same guy? And it gets in your head and you start to play tighter. I'll give you a perfect example. Aaron Rodgers got his first Super Bowl pretty early on in his career with Green Bay. And then after that, they got to 4 NFC Championship games.
Yeah.
And each one, his performance declined, not because of age, not because of skill, but because you start to get into your head like, I got to make this throw. I can't turn the ball over. I can't do this. I can't do that. And you start to really press. Mm-hmm. And when you start to press and you don't play the game you're normally playing, that's what happens to you. And so, with the Packers, it was like the first, championship game that they got to, post Super Bowl, they got blown out by the Falcons. They were pretty banged up. They lost receivers during that game. They were going with pretty much a rookie, second year, I should say, by then. Actually, the first one was the Seattle one. That's the one where Rodgers had the torn calf muscle.
Yes. I remember that one.
They lost that game not because of Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers played great on a torn calf muscle against the number 1 defense in football in the Legion of Boom.
Mm-hmm.
And, they fumbled they missed the onside kick, went right through Brandon Bostic's hands, and Seattle capitalized, got the tying touch, or got the lead. Then Rodgers still hobbling down the field, hustling down with less than a minute left, got them in the field goal position to get it to overtime, then never saw the ball. Then they had the Atlanta one, which was a blowout. All they had really was Adams left on the receivers. Their linemen were jacked up. They just got blown out in Atlanta. But then the next one they played was against the 49ers. They got railroaded. Rodgers looked like crap. The whole team looked like crap. And then you got that Bucs game against Tom Brady. That is a team that should have won a Super Bowl that year. Yes. They were that good. Rodgers got multiple opportunities in that second half with those picks that Brady threw, and they could not convert. And it was because Rodgers was playing tight. He was not seeing the field. He did not see, hey, I've got a wide opening, right up the middle. Even if I don't score a touchdown here, I'm going to be down at the 1, and we have a decision to make on 4th down where we can go for it from the 1. Instead, he just kind of ate it and threw it away. And that's what starts to happen. And I'm worried that will happen with Josh Allen at this point. If they don't do this. And this will be another time where Pat Mahomes is walking off the field victorious and you're walking off the field. He's played damn near perfect in both of those games.
Sure. Yep.
And you start to doubt yourself because it's what happens, especially when you're the quarterback. Like, you're the focal point. You're going to get all the accolades, but you're also going to get all the blame. He's going to be in his head like, what do I have to do? Because then you try to become too perfect.
Right.
And that's when you start to make the mistakes, and then you start to get off your game, and you start to, question your reads and question, is this the time I take off? Is this the time I throw it? Do I make this play? Do I throw it away? Do I try, doing this? And that's the kind of stuff that I worry about. So it's a huge game for both teams, I think, but even bigger for the Buffalo Bills because they have it now. It's set up. Whereas, they're not going to Arrowhead.
Yeah, right. This is exactly what
the only team they'd have left to go face on the road is Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
And they've had success in Baltimore.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it's a huge, huge game for Buffalo, and especially for Josh Allen, because he has put a lot into this season. He still makes the dumb mistakes that he makes during the regular season. And I was having this conversation offline about why he's not being talked about more as the MVP. Yes, he scored a lot, but he also turned it over way too many times.
Right. Yes.
Turn it over 21 times and say you're the MVP.
Sure. Right.
And I use this analogy. I said, listen, if you got a weight loss challenge and you lost 25 pounds, but you gained 19 back, and the other guy only lost 18 pounds, but he only gained 4 back.
Mm-hmm.
Who did a better job at the challenge? It was like, well, I lost 25 pounds, but you gained 19 back.
Okay. That's actually a very good analogy there.
So,
I like that.
Again, if I see that, yes, Josh Allen had 44 total touchdowns this year because he had 15 rushing touchdowns, but 29 passing. But he also had 21 turnovers. That's a lot of turnovers.
That is.
That's a lot of putting your team in a bad position. You putting your defense in a bad position, and then they're like, well, and then he tried to break out this stat with Pro Football Focus, uses, and they're like, well, only certain ones were turnover worthy that we deemed. And I'm like, if you need formulas to do your arguments here, you're losing your argument.
Yeah, well,
you can't turn the ball over that many. Well, he threw ones that were like a punt. Yeah, okay. So he threw what? 3 of those?
Yeah, okay.
Great. He still had 15 interceptions.
You mentioned earlier there's a stat for everything, but there's always an argument or an excuse for everything.
Yeah, it is. And he cuts those in half. He is the MVP.
Sure. Right. Absolutely.
But the reason Lamar is getting it is because he didn't play a lot of those games where they were in blowouts in the second half. He has a defense that puts them in good position, so you don't have to put up a lot of yards. And they were second in the league in rushing touchdowns by 1.
Mm-hmm.
He only had 5 of those.
Indeed.
That means he hands off the ball for 21. So, yeah, he didn't get a lot of passing touchdowns.
No.
But he didn't need to.
He's got over 4,000 all-purpose yards, though.
Right.
By himself, 4, he has 3,678 passing yards, right? As well as 821 rushing yards, 24 pass TDs, 5 rushing touchdowns, only 7 interceptions.
Right. And 2 fumbles.
2 fumbles. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's still 9 turnovers, and the other guy had 21.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
You can make the case on stats and numbers alone, but you have the best player on the best team performing at a high level and taking care of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Again, he could have gotten selfish and padded his stats.
Yeah, absolutely.
26 rushing touchdowns. Buffalo had 22. Allen had 15 of those.
Yeah.
So Lamar's like, okay, well, we'll hand it off here. And you score touchdowns. That's great. You don't have to be the guy who throws 50 touchdowns in a season.
Sure. Right. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a team game.
Don't throw 21.
Team game.
He's like, well, how's that make him MVP? And I'm like, Because he's the best player on the best team.
Uh-huh.
That's typically where it goes. Unless you have some insane
is this a conversation you have?
Oh, you know who it's
okay. Yeah. It's starting to sound like it was starting to sound like it was becoming one of those.
Well, worry about the Super Bowl.
Well, it's because
get a ring.
Right. It's because right now at this point it comes at a time where the optic is about Mahomes. And then, kind of Lamar Jackson, knowing his history and what, adversity he kind of faced coming into the league. He wasn't, remember, he was a running back. He wasn't a quarterback, right? He's only about to win his second MVP. Second, right? Yeah. So, I mean, like, I think that's where that stems from. Let's shift gears a little bit, though. Let's talk about football weekend really quickly. In closing, I should say, so to speak. We're going to start with the games on Saturday, the 20th here, 4:30 p.m. Eastern. Houston visits Baltimore. I just was there, and it's cold. But 81.7% of ESPN America believes the Baltimore Ravens are going to win. Brandon, who you got?
I have Baltimore. I think it'll be a closer game than maybe some people are anticipating. Because, the Texans do have a pretty good defense. CJ Stroud's playing really well, but Baltimore's defense is just so physical. And they don't make the stupid plays where they're blowing coverages for guys to be wide open. And I think that's kind of how Texans have benefited so much.
Sure.
Recently, you look at some of those plays, they're great plays. They're great throws by Stroud. But at the same time, I look at it and I'm like, why is that guy so wide open? And I hadn't watched film breakdown, with the Texans. Maybe it's because the receivers are running so well, but they did play, Cleveland played poorly this past week, but they didn't change anything up. They just kept blitzing.
Right.
And, Jim Schwartz has always been, the zebra who can't change his stripes.
Right.
That's what he lives and dies by. And it works a lot of times, but when it doesn't work, it looks real ugly. And it didn't work this week. Especially since, Flacco was turning it over. That was a close game until he threw those two pick sixes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, it was.
Even though, the Texan had scored and it was pretty easy when they scored, it was still a close game. But then when it got to this is a one-dimensional thing, it was all over. But I think Baltimore, they don't turn the ball over very much and they play really strong defense. They'll be at home. It's going to be cold. It's not going to be in a dome, which is where, Houston's played the last 2 weeks and played really well between playing in Indianapolis and then playing, at home in Texas. So I give the edge to Baltimore, probably by 7 to 10 points.
I'm going to say Baltimore as well. I think all of what you said, plus the known statistic. I don't know it to be fact. The sources trust me, bro. But if you're a dome team going to the East Coast,
it is a real thing,
and playing outdoors.
Yeah, a lot of people don't want to admit that. It is a real thing.
It is a real thing, and I think that's going. I'm not saying that that's going to be the complete difference maker because that Baltimore defense is
does slow you down,
very, very good. But it does slow you down, and I think that Baltimore overall, top to bottom, may be the better team. The Texans are a wonderful story. It's a great story.
Yeah,
but I feel like
and they're going to be there for a while.
Sure, absolutely. But I believe that Baltimore is the better team. And I am among the 80% or higher that believe that Baltimore will win there. All right. So
they've already played and they got beat pretty bad too.
The nightcap on the 20th at 8:15 for the record-setting 10th time in the playoffs. The Packers will visit the 49ers. When you look at the season leaders of each team, quarterback, it's pretty daggum even there. Jordan Love, 372 of 579, 4,159 yards, 32 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. Brock Purdy, 308 to 444, 4,280 yards, 31 TDs to 11 interceptions. We can go down the list, but really that's kind of where
it's the two quarterbacks that have the biggest, the loudest contingency of doubters and haters.
Sure.
Brock Purdy is only a system quarterback, and Jordan Love can't play football. So like, you got two guys that, get a lot of hate, but then they're just performing.
That they're performing and they want to prove the doubters wrong. However, the matchup predictor ESPN Analytics says 78.6% of America believes the San Francisco 49ers are going to defeat the Green Bay Packers. Brandon, I know you're picking Green Bay. Explain why you will, besides the fact that they're your team.
Well, I think they can win, and it'll be a close game. It's going to come down to one thing and one thing only, and it's going to come down to the defense. It always seems to be the thing in Green Bay is, can the defense get it done? It was like this with Rodgers, and now it's like this, in the Jordan Love era here.
Sure.
And it's not for lack of talent. They have a lot of talent on that side of the ball. It's just, will the communication, will the scheme, will everything, do what it's supposed to? They looked good against Dallas last week. They looked good against Chicago the week before. They looked good against Minnesota the week before that. They looked awful against the Bucks and Giants. Giants, not so much, but, and then they also did, defense didn't look good against Carolina either. So it's not for lack of talent. It's for lack of execution,
sure,
or game plan, whatever you want to call it. I think that they can get it done. I think that it's going to require them to get out of the gates fast, though, with the offense.
Yes. Yes.
If they can catch them where, because listen, San Fran didn't play last week. They also didn't play the week before. They set their starters against the Rams. Sam Darnold was playing quarterback against Carson Wentz. That's 2 weeks of not playing football. You can practice all you want. Game's a different situation. The speed's different, everything.
Yeah.
So if Green Bay can come out and get out of the gates fast like they did against Dallas, and San Fran comes out a little rusty, that I think is how Green Bay can pull it off. I know no one thinks that they can. No one thought they could last week either. The percentage was actually a lot higher last week.
Yes. I don't have that, but I know it was.
People, it was 92%.
Oh, wow. All right.
Yeah, it was 92% on your ESPN matchup predictor.
Oh, there
it was 92%.
Okay.
So we've increased 13% by beating the snot out of the Dallas Cowboys.
So I'm gonna say I agree with you in terms of with the defense is really that's really going to set the tone, because when you look at the Christian McCaffrey, I mean, that's going to be his name alone, that's going to be the key. Can the defense not solely focus on like limit him enough to where it's not opening up Brandon Ayuk for his opportunities and things like that.
Or Debo, Kittle.
So the Niners are loaded, and it's really I don't think it's gonna be the offense that of the Packers that wins that game for them. I think it's gonna need to be a stout defensive effort. I
don't even know if it's gonna be stout. Like, I think it just has to make some stops.
Okay, that's fair.
Hold them to some field goals.
I believe the Green Bay Packers. Now, don't get me wrong. We're at a point in time where my potential Super Bowl I rematch could in fact happen again. So I'm kind of pumped up about that, and I wouldn't mind the Green Bay Packers winning. I don't know that I see them winning this game, though. I think San Fran is just too loaded. But play this game next year, and I think we might be having a very different story, because I feel like the Packers it clicked. And
I mean, without the starters, they've they still did lose 4 games.
Indeed. Moving over to Sunday at 3:00 on NBC, a game of, I think it's like good vibes interest there. Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers head to Detroit to play the Lions at home at Ford Field. You talk about, I mean, you got to give Baker his flowers, man, and what he's been able to do in Tampa, and then of course
2 teams now that he's been in the playoffs with.
Yep, and then Jared Goff, when just looking at him and kind of that whole story. I know they're in the
How about that
division.
game ball?
Oh yeah,
Dan Campbell, HCDC, as they call him, hands over just looks and goes, Jared Goff, you're good enough for Detroit. And gave him the ball. Like, that was awesome.
Yeah,
because
like was really
he was
cool.
pretty much written off. This is the guy who went to a Super Bowl
with the Rams.
Mm-hmm. And lost to Tom freaking Brady.
Mm-hmm.
And you ran him out of town. Like, it's insane to me. This guy was a number 1 overall draft pick.
Yep.
And he did well in LA. Like,
he didn't.
Remember that classic
do bad.
fucking game? One of the best games I've ever watched was him and Mahomes dueling on Monday night.
I remember that.
That was insane.
That was in the Coliseum too.
Yeah, it was insane.
It was crazy.
And they were like, 2 years later, you suck.
Yeah,
you're out of here.
Goodbye. Well,
like, what?
And so you knew damn well it felt good for Jared Goff to take that knee and get the Rams out of the playoffs and all of that.
Yeah.
And incidentally, I want to say this.
Should.
I want to say this to the Rams fan base, whom kind of threw a little shade on the Lions fan base for booing Matt Stafford in the playoff game.
It's been 3 years.
It's been number 1. It's been 3 years. Number 2,
it's the playoffs.
It's the playoffs. Like I would expect.
Number 3, we're adults.
Exactly.
Let's stop being fucking babies.
62.5% of ESPN analytics say the Lions over the Buccaneers. I am going to go ahead and say I'm with them there. I feel like the Lions are going to beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I don't think it's going to be like a throw, they're going to blow them out or anything. I think it'll be a good competitive game.
It'll be a good game. But it's going to be a hard fought game because Todd Bowles coaches them up, those guys are aggressive over on that side, and it's going to be physical, and it's going to come down to who can limit the turnovers.
Right.
And I trust Goff a little more than Mayfield.
I do as well. And with that, I feel
I still think the best. There was 2 great press conferences this week, and they both were hysterical. First one was right after the Bills beat the Steelers, and they asked, "Is there any more questions?" And they were like, "Anyone?" And then this woman finally chimes in and is like, "Hey, Mike, you have 1 year left." And he went,
and
nope,
he
just
stormed
walked out the door.
He stormed off and left.
He was like, "Nope." He just, his eyes were like,
"Yep,
no, I'm not answering that question," and took off. That one was great, but then it got topped the next day when the female reporter asked Todd Bowles how they were going to handle the weather in Detroit, because it's not like playing in Tampa Bay where it's warm and sunny. And he's like, he just sat there with a dead face. He's like, "Is she really going there?" "Nope, she is." "All right, I'll let her finish." And he goes, "Yeah, I think we're playing at a dome, so I don't think it really matters." I think we are going to be out in the cold for about 12 seconds from the bus and into the stadium, so I think we're good. No special preparations needed there.
you gotta love it.
Yo,
you gotta love
who's asking these questions?
I don't know, man. I don't know. Tell me you know about you don't know about football without.
Jeez Louise,
that was pretty bad. The main event on Sunday on CBS at 6:30. Kansas City visits Orchard Park against the Buffalo Bills. You know the story of both teams. We don't need to really go into it at this point, other than 56.6% of America feels Buffalo has this one. I am going to say I am among that 56.6% of America. I think that Buffalo is riding some kind of phenomenal wave, momentum, whatever it is. I am all in. I am bought in on it. This, something clicked, something happened, and they're playing on another level. I'm going to say Buffalo takes this one in a close one.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Buffalo too. And I think the reason it stays close is because Kansas City A has a good defense,
Very
but
good
B,
defense.
Buffalo's banged up on the defensive side. So for as mediocre as Kansas City's offense has been this season, they'll be helped out a little bit by the amount of injuries, which is crazy because they had the same luck the week before with Miami's defense being so beat up. But I think Buffalo being at home, I think that Josh is finally going to get that Steve Young moment where, he was getting beat. Yeah, not so necessarily that, like, the Super Bowl monkey off the back. Well, no, because he got to the Super Bowl, and that's when he finally took the monkey off the back. Sure. It was beating Dallas, which was the big thing that, like, he was struggling with. That was when he finally beat Dallas, he could finally, like, breathe that sigh of relief, and then he got to the Super Bowl, and they just pasted.
Right.
The Chargers, and, he was able to say, yeah, I can take that monkey off my back. But the monkey really came off his back when they beat Dallas. Like, Dallas had been the boogeyman, and, Aikman and Irvin and Smith and all those guys, they had, kind of tormented him, and he, was still, Joe Montana's backup in everybody's eyes.
Yep.
And that was his game where he finally, they finally did it. They broke through at home. They beat Dallas at home in that muddy ass game. And they got to got to go to the Super Bowl. Yep. I think this is going to be it for Buffalo too. And I think if they can get over that hump by beating Kansas City in the playoffs, I think it's going to be big trouble the following week for whoever they're playing.
Oh, for sure.
I think they're going to play so much more free, and they're going to see, like, hey,
we can do this.
We got over that hump, and we see what's on the other side.
Yep.
Now they're going to go get it.
I don't think there is a team in the NFC that beats Buffalo, to be perfectly honest.
I mean, I was talking about the Baltimore-Houston results first.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, I guess indirectly I am too, because I don't.
I could see San Francisco matching up well against Buffalo,
maybe,
which would be the Berman Bowl.
That would be the Berman.
The Bills.
That
Bills
would be the
49ers. Always.
I think it's funny you mentioned that because
Lions would match up nice too.
Chris Berman, what do you say about that? Oh, never mind. Apparently, he's not saying anything. The soundboard
sleeping.
The soundboard failed me again. We say, what do you say about that, Chris Berman? Back. No, that's not what he said. How about this one more time here? Oh no, it's gonna be stupid on me. So I don't care. That's all right.
Good radio. Good radio.
Indeed. Sorry. Anyways, that's gonna do it for this podcast here. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. And again, subscribe. When you subscribe, that is great. That helps us out tremendously. We love it. We appreciate it. Brandon and I will be back again next week. We agree on all but one game, and that's, of course, the Packers game. But we'll be back to talk about that and a whole lot more next week. So, Brandon, good day to you, sir.
Good to you.
So long, everybody. Good night now. Flavor Flav, give me a yeah, boy, and post-edit because the damn soundboard decided to shit the bed right now.
Yeah, boy!
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.